Welcome to another episode of Hope Ropes. Today we have a beautiful soul. Her name is Jessica Nava, and I'm so excited to share her story of recovery with you all because I've actually had the pleasure of working with Jessica, and I think her transformation is so inspiring and relatable. And I'll tell you a little bit about Jessica. So she joins us from Houston, Texas. She has a background in healthcare where she worked as a certified nurse aide for 9 years, focusing on private care with children and disabilities. And in 2011, while continuing her education as a psychology major, she met her husband and eventually moved to England, where they married and had their beautiful daughter. She currently works full time for a relocation logistics company, but like many other self healers, feels a calling to pursue this career in the mind body healing field. So she's so passionate about supporting other self healers, and you'll see that throughout this interview. And she's currently working on her own certification to become a mind body coach, which is exciting. We need more help in this community for sure. Her story of recovery includes healing from chronic fatigue syndrome, severe brain fog, anxiety, panic, hormone imbalance, among other things. And she'll go into those as well as we're talking. So welcome, Jessica. I'm so happy to have you here, and I'm so happy we made this work.
Yes, I'm so happy to be here speaking with you today and that we could finally get together to make this work.
Yeah, we tried to arrange this a couple times and life as a mom, right? Like things get in the
Yeah.
way and life happens. And I'm so glad that today all the moons aligned or whatever the planets aligned and it worked out. So let's begin by telling me or telling us a little bit about your story before this chronic illness journey. So what was that like and how was life for you?
So before everything's, my first perfect storm, as we call it in DNRS, before that started, I was living a pretty active life. I was traveling internationally, I was working full time, and I had a really fulfilling job, and I worked with a really great family. I was really active. I'd go to the gym every day. I was pretty social and, just really enjoying my life and really enjoying traveling internationally for the first time. My now husband and I had just started dating. So we were sort of going back and forth between England and my home here in Houston. And everything was just going really, really great. I honestly could say, I know when you and I talked before, Vanessa, in a coaching call, that I had felt like I had finally got to this really great place in my life right before I got sick, which I know a lot of people have sort of said the same thing happened to them. And which puts you more in that, like, why is this happening, position whenever sort of life had come together so beautifully for me. And I was sort of out of my 20s and navigating my life and what path I wanted to be on. And I had just turned 30 and everything was just going really, really well. And then I started to rapidly have a lot of symptoms come up that
Mhm.
I, sort of out of the blue that really wasn't sure what was going on. At the time, I tied it to a reaction to medication that I had taken, that I had had some reactions to while I was on it. And then whenever I got off of it, just a whole host of things started happening really quickly.
Mhm.
Of course, in hindsight, with the healing process, we can see how much we're actually primed for dysregulation our whole life. So yeah, so one of the first things that started happening was I started getting really fatigued. I was pretty active. I'd go to the gym like maybe an hour and a half every day. I was always like pushing myself at the gym. So for my energy to just sort of shut down really quickly was it was surprising to me. I wasn't quite sure what was going on. I was definitely that person that worked like two full-time jobs while going to college. So I knew what tired felt like, and that was not what was happening. Like this level of sort of tiredness and fatigue was something completely different than I had ever experienced. I also had a short period of time when my hair started falling out, which was a big, like, I mean, everything just started happening. And like a lot of people, I was really stumped as to what was going on. I started getting really cold in my extremities. I started getting a lot of brain fog. And I remember very specifically when this all started happening, I was driving to work one day and I had a startle response, which at the
Mhm.
time I did not know what that was. But I just remember seeing a car out of the corner of my eye and getting this huge, like, startle and adrenaline rush in my body and
Mhm.
thinking, I will always remember that because that's such a tell now that I know what I know. But at the time, I just remember thinking, what was that? Like, that is, that was like the oddest thing that I had ever experienced. So from that point on, I went to a doctor. I obviously was, thinking something's up, and I was initially diagnosed with hypothyroidism. And I was given medication for that. So, of course, I thought I had found the solution to my
Yeah.
problem. And this was about 13 years ago. So, my journey started, about 13 years ago. And I tried the medication. I never really noticed any difference, but more symptoms continued to show up. So that really began my journey, like a lot of other people, of starting to see specialists, starting to see
Mhm.
doctors, still persisting with things starting to come up with, just food sensitivities, and just a lot of weird things, achiness in my joints. I wasn't able to work out anymore. My metabolism had sort of shut down and I was starting to gain weight unexplainably. So this continued on, and I mainly was focused on hypothyroidism. This is what I believed
Yeah.
was going on. So this is where I put all of my focus for the next couple of years. Um, During that time, I did move overseas to England with my husband, and we got married. And I was sort of in a lucky position that I wasn't working at the time. My husband was in the Royal Navy, and we had just bought a house, and I was able to just sort of rest and also focus all my attention in searching for an answer
Great.
of what was going on. And I also did what a lot of people do, which was, oh, it's diet. I need a detox. It's the
Mhm.
toxins and the makeup I'm wearing and the lotions I wear, So I am grateful that I learned as much as I did about food
Mhm.
and products, and I incorporated that into creating like a really toxic free environment. But at the same time, of course, I didn't know this at the time, we're sort of feeding this fear to
Mhm.
our brain of what could be making us sick. And over several years, more things came up. I started getting heightened smell sensitivities, like just the smell of
Yes,
things would
yes.
bother me really bad. Um, I started getting a lot of food sensitivities. I was tailoring my diet more and more and more. And, I was getting food reactions. And so it was just more things were building up over time.
Yeah, yeah, that like
Um,
snowball effect, right? It's almost like we
yes,
come in with this one thing and then throughout the years we start collecting more and more.
yes.
And can I ask you, just with your experience, like your nursing background, were you kind of, did that impact how you approached this initially? Was that really what um really made you really go to more of the traditional route of things? Like you're like, I'm given this diagnosis, so this is the thyroid, and so like, this is it, right? Did you at that point also explore anything outside of that traditional, more Western medicine approach?
I did not. I mean, honestly, it's what I knew. I was even
Yeah.
pre-med at a time, so I had lots of courses where you're just focused on the physiology and the
Mm,
symptoms. And, this was what I just really believed. And I just focused so much on what I could do for my thyroid. Several years into that, I would get tested, and my levels never change. I never notice any difference with medication. So I actually just stopped the medication.
interesting.
And this is when I started to realize maybe something else is going on here. But I still didn't know what. So, like everyone else, I started going to more alternative paths where I was doing detox and herbs and, all kinds of different
Mhm.
cleanses. And during this time, I also became a mother to my child. And even though, what I was experiencing didn't cause me to become bedridden, I was still able to sort of go on with my life. I was not the same. My world
Mhm.
inside became really small. My love for life had sort of gone as far as like the things that I love, the passions that I had, um, because I was just so focused on what I could use my energy for in any given day. And I was so focused on trying to figure out what was going on with me. So of course that affects a lot because I didn't feel as happy anymore. I didn't have as
Yeah.
much joy for things because I didn't have the capacity to enjoy
Yeah.
them or to do them anymore. And that takes a big toll on us as well. I
Yes,
was able
yeah, as
to,
humans, as parents,
yeah,
as wives, as just partners. And it's just, what you're describing is very clearly that dorsal vagal shutdown, right? That, lower on the polyvagal ladder, that like you said, is not having any motivation to do much. I don't have these, I don't have that joy. I can't connect. It's almost
yeah,
like you're completely shut down. Um, and we know that that's kind of what comes, right? At that point where it's like we've exhausted everything, we're completely depleted, and now we need to be safe, right? And to kind of come back into that cocoonish type feeling. And so, how was that as a mother, right? Like you had your daughter was quite young at that age, I would imagine. So how was that for you? I mean, I know for myself, mom guilt like exists in general, like aside from the chronic illness community. But when you layer on top of it, comparisons to other moms, like, how all these moms can just get up and go with their kids.
yeah,
They don't have to nap with their kids. They're enjoying them. They're happy. Why am I not happy? What's wrong with, that mom guilt? So I can imagine that you probably felt that as well, or I could be wrong, but
no, no, absolutely. That it had a profound effect on, being able to parent the way that I guess I always had an idea in my mind that I would be able to. And, I have a very loving partner and father who, absolutely helped me in every way that he could, but that didn't take away what I felt at the end of the day, that I couldn't be more active with my daughter, that I couldn't be more present. And whenever you have like a chronic illness like this, you sort of get this tunnel vision on just focusing on yourself and
hmm
your
hmm
illness and
yeah,
trying to get better, so I didn't feel like I could extend myself and be as present as I wanted to be with my daughter. And
yeah,
that's still part of my grieving process that I'm learning to let go of, because that went on for a long time, and you know, my daughter, as she gets older, she's like she never realized anything was wrong, like we still created this great loving home for her. But there was still so much inside that I wanted to be able to give
yeah,
to
yeah,
her of myself that I just couldn't, I just could not do that. So
yeah,
I'm grateful for the support I had, but yeah, that definitely impacted parenthood in a way that I never imagined it was
yeah.
going to go.
Yeah, and you're
So
talking about that grief that shows up with that as well. And same with me is I literally can't remember certain years, right? Because I got sick before they were born, so they only knew me as unwell, right? And that
right.
lasted well into, their years. And so for myself, it's like, wow, I missed out on like a chunk. Like I will literally go, can go back to pictures and I have no recollection because it was
Yeah,
survival, right? So
right.
so that again, that process of grieving that, right? And forgiving myself because I think that that was a big piece. I was so hard on myself. I could have done this. I should have done that. I could have been
Yes.
better. Look at what that person's doing and look, and obviously that doesn't help, but it's a natural response and reaction. And so working with forgiveness for myself and recognizing that I did the best that I could with what I had and the fact that they still felt loved. What you just
Yes.
described, your daughter's like, she
Yes.
still grew up in a safe home where she felt loved and seen.
Yes.
And that's what matters, right? And so, and then as you're doing this work, our children attune to our nervous systems. And so,
Yes.
whether you know it or not, like they're getting the benefits, they are reaping the benefits of the work that we're doing. And yeah,
Which
and
I
I'm
think is
sure
amazing.
yeah,
I think it's an amazing thing. There's so many amazing connections between mother and child anyway, but I find that to be amazing that the more we heal, the more that heals and regulates our children
exactly.
automatically. And
Yeah.
yeah, so I think that's a beautiful thing, and that is where I'm at. Sort of, I'm still processing that
Hmm.
grief with the work that I'm doing now, and it's so important and it's so healing. And it really allows me to just forgive myself and to just honor what was
Yes.
happening at the time.
Yeah.
um but yeah, so I was lucky to stay home with my daughter till she was about 2.5. We moved back to the States and I went back to the working world. So I was still in this
Okay. Yes.
dysregulated state, still always trying to figure it out. My husband was and continues to be an amazing pillar of support for me and was always on this journey trying to help us figure out what could be going on. I moved on from thyroid to, oh, I must have adrenal fatigue. I must have
Hmm.
hormonal imbalance.
Yeah.
I was just going down the ladder of what it could be and trying protocols, to try to help with that. And my husband was able to be a stay-at-home dad, and I went back into the workforce, which was a new career for me. And I really just jumped into the modern day rat race, which of course just created even more dysregulation. I used to actually, before I even knew what was going on, I used to actually describe to my husband, I said, I feel like I have my foot on the gas and I can't get out of that position. Like I feel stuck in this accelerated position that I can't pull out of. So I worked for 3 years and I didn't have the tools. I wasn't, I didn't, hadn't found any program yet. More dysregulation was happening. Um, I didn't know how to listen to what my body was trying to tell me yet. And then I had a second perfect storm,
Okay.
which was about a little over 2 years ago. And that one was a lot more traumatic for me because before it was a lot of physical symptoms that I was having. And with this perfect storm, everything really ramped up into fight or flight and anxiety, panic. A lot of psychological things came in at that point, which really, in hindsight, stopped me from where I was at in a position in my life with work that was really detrimental to my health. I felt sort of trapped in this job. I didn't know how to leave. So I feel like my body really, really stopped me for myself. And because of that happening, I immediately quit that job and I moved into a position that was, stress free. I was able to start working from home. And so I was able to make this big dramatic shift that unfortunately I had to wait until I went into this second perfect storm and all of these host of new symptoms came in and sort of really stopped me. Like I
So
really,
let's pause there because that's an excellent example of the inception of these symptoms.
yes,
They always come with a purpose initially, right? They're trying to get our attention initially. We may not be listening, or maybe they're going to whisper, maybe there's going to be a subtle response, a subtle message, but in this situation, their brain is making that calculation that this workplace is not safe.
yes,
It is, killing you, right? To
yes,
an extent. And
yes,
so it spoke for you. And so the
yes,
symptoms got loud and you had no choice but to stop. And so initially, if we can look at it this way, and maybe this will help dispel the fear around some things, is the body was working for you, right? Your survival brain was working for you. And initially, these symptoms served that purpose of keeping you safe,
yes.
right? So I just wanted to recognize that in this moment because this is an excellent example of how they served you initially.
Yes.
Please continue.
Yeah, so I mean, in hindsight, it's so glaring to see how much my body was really trying to communicate with me. I did not have the tools to understand or listen to that. And with this second perfect storm, it did literally stop me in my tracks. And that was a quite traumatic experience for me. I was not experiencing extreme panic or anxiety or anything like that prior to, and it came with depersonalization and intrusive thoughts. And it came with a whole host of things that I had no idea about. So I mean, the alarm bells were really going off, in my limbic brain. And, my husband was still supporting me. And I was like, I have to get out of this job. I made a career change, which was extremely beneficial to me. And it actually gave me what I wanted, was to be back home with my daughter. And I found a wonderful position that allowed me to do that. Um, so this carried on for a few months and I went back to square one. I have a very like overachieving
Hmm.
part of me that excelled academically, that could always figure it out. And it served me well in this place, in the sense that I was like, I'm not going to stop until I figure out
Hmm.
what it is that's going on. So I started back at square one, but this time I found a local doctor in Houston, who had started a side clinic called a wellness clinic. And I saw a YouTube video he did where he started talking about um, Western medicine missing the connection between mind, body, and spirit
Oh,
when it comes to health. And that really like spoke to me intuitively. I was like, feeling like maybe this was like a missing piece. And at this time, I had incorporated some yoga, I had incorporated some breath work, but I still didn't really have the understanding behind what was happening to my brain when I did those exercises. So I went back on the journey for the doctor. I called and made a sort of doctor's visit over online. And I really just sort of liked what he had to say. I had given him my whole background. I called him, we spoke. He said, I looked through all of your history. And the first question he asked me was, did you have a stressful childhood? And I
mm,
thought, why are you asking me this question? What does that have anything to do with what's going on now? Right. Like
yeah.
that was still completely separate thing. And I said, yeah, I said, I did, and his second question was, have you ever heard of limbic therapy?
Mm,
And I said, no, I had not ever heard of that. And we talked a little bit about limbic impairment. I still really wasn't sure what it was he was saying was going on. But after that phone call, I got online and started doing my research immediately
awesome.
about limbic impairment. And that very day, I found the DNRS program.
Oh,
So
wow.
that was really the big link. I never did a follow-up appointment with this doctor, but he will never know how pivotal, you know,
Maybe he'll watch. Yeah, that's
yes,
amazing.
how pivotal that was to finally find a doctor who recognized like you've had 10 years of stuff going on without any resolution, and that he was sort of putting these pieces together himself.
Yeah.
Um,
Wow, that's,
it was
what
amazing.
a difference, let's say, compared to some doctors, right? I know that there are many of us who've had really difficult experiences and challenging experiences with doctors who have very, just gaslit us, dismissed what we're saying, or misdiagnosed us many times, over
Yeah.
medicated us. And yet there are still doctors out there, like I love that you brought this up, right? Just to bring that hope to the community of, there are some really good doctors out there who are making that connection, who are recognizing that. And I'll give you a quick example. You brought up the story of him asking you if you had a difficult childhood. So I remember being at the migraine clinic, like the top clinic in Canada, top specialist for migraines. And I went to go see the doctor there, and she made me fill out an ACEs test, adverse childhood experience. I'd never done
Yes.
one before. And I had been seeing therapists for years. And I'm like, why am I filling this out with a neurologist?
Okay.
And
Yeah.
so we went through I started filling out and I'm like, yes, 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 like all of the things, like I'm telling you,
Yes.
my scores were off the charts and I'm like, is this a good
Yeah.
thing? Like, I don't even know.
Yeah.
And she said to me at that point, and she's like, there is a direct correlation between, this your score and chronic pain.
Yeah.
And I was like, huh? Really? And like that really started me on that journey of the TMS stuff, right? And the, curable app and stuff like that. But I just wanted to kind of share that as well, right? It's amazing how now you're seeing this now become more accepted, and people are starting to see this connection, and that gets me really excited. So, bring me now to you just found the DNRS. So, for those of you watching, the DNRS is the Dynamic Neural Retraining System, and it is the program that I started with as well, right? And it's a really wonderful way to, first of all, understand the science behind what's happening, the nervous system dysregulation, why the limbic system is that threat mechanism isn't properly working properly. Its threat detection is off. The alarm is just going off all the time. And then it also helps you with its principles, right? Helps you to rewire your brain, turn off that alarm, connect to, disconnect that threat, and help you train towards building safety in your environment, right? With multiple things. So yeah, tell us more about your experience with that.
So when I found DNRS, it only took me about a week before I signed up for the program. I immediately, people who are on this journey and we tap into like our intuition, our higher self. But as soon as I started hearing people's testimonials, hearing people talk about limbic impairment, learning more about the program, I mean, it really set off like a light bulb in my head. And I was like, this is it. Like, I know that this is what is going on. Like, it can't be a coincidence that so many people have such similar stories,
Hmm.
and that this is sort of what's going on. And it creates an umbrella of symptoms that come and go and are just odd and, just so many things that you can't explain. And so I signed up for it, and I really just started diving into that whole world of neuroplasticity and limbic impairment, and started learning the science behind it, which was really beneficial to how I like to learn things. So I like to get the science behind it. I like a lot of concrete, evidence. And so that was really helpful that there was so much of that. And the program was just really beneficial to me, bringing me from a place of victim to a place of choice and power, was profound, to realize like, oh, I'm not a victim. I actually have the power to create healing within myself.
Hmm.
That was very transformative. And just all the tools that DNRS uses, they all make sense. A friend of mine said they're like a stool with five legs. There's a big five pillars of
Oh,
DNRS, and they all work together really well. And if you're not doing all of them, it's like taking away a leg on that stool, and it may not,
yeah.
support you as well. So I really went all in for it. Like a lot of people, the first few weeks, I started feeling like really good. I had,
Mhm.
these big bursts of dopamine, hits happening, of calmness. And I felt really, really well, which only, made me understand that this is really key to my healing. And then the resistance started. And
Yeah.
so that's a whole, so navigating healing DNRS, I feel I always use the analogy as it really helped tend the soil to my garden of healing. It gave me
Mm.
a lot of awareness, curious observer, learning that thinking greater than how I feel is knowing greater than how I feel. And the power of visualizations. And I mean, it was just all really, really beneficial. It really helped me. One of the biggest things that I love so much is the community that I built because of DNRS. At the time, I really couldn't socialize as much as I wanted to, and I couldn't connect, and I didn't have the desire to. And the community within DNRS, the friends that I made that I continue to have today, I didn't realize how much I needed that
Yeah.
connect.
Yeah. Yeah, the
I mean, that,
community is amazing, right? I mean,
yeah.
I
So
still have my DNRS friends, right, from early on in my journey. And And there's some that I still talk to every day. Like it's
Yeah.
wild how that deep that connection is when you're experiencing something similar and healing together, right?
Yes.
It's just it's incredible.
Yeah, it is amazing. And DNRS, they offer living DNRS classes, which is a coach, and that meets with you once a week in a big group of people. And I formed a lot of friendships. And when our DNRS class was done, we formed our own private group to continue to support
Awesome.
each other. And
Yeah.
we've remained really good friends. We've had this group for like a year. We support each other. We've all grown so much. And it is a very beautiful, special relationship to have. So I was really excited about that to be able to create my own community. And so with DNRS, I started to see things, symptoms starting to not completely go away, but were not as intense.
Hmm.
And with other ones, they weren't 24/7. They were starting to go from 24/7 to just occasionally they would come back. And, so this
Right.
was the initial healing that I started to see. Um, a lot of things wrapped up quickly, like my smell sensitivity. I was able to start sleeping better. So there was a lot of things that I can say was starting to happen with DNRS. But I did get to a point about a year and a half in that I started to feel like I needed more. Like maybe there
Okay.
was more that I needed to incorporate. And I sort of felt that around the year mark, but I did try to incorporate something else, and I learned very quickly that I didn't really have the capacity to bring something else in. So DNRS definitely served its purpose to get me to get my nervous system and limbic brain to calm down enough so that I could start incorporating other things in. And this was about a year and a half ago, which was last summer. And I was sort of in the midst of an ebb, which was the biggest one that I had sort of been in during this time of healing. And this is when I found you. This is
Ah,
when I found you.
yay.
And this is also when I found Chronic Fatigue School, which also is now SOMIA International. But I found you online and I signed up for Haven and I just loved all of the tools that you had. And at the time, I was really needing extra support, and your SOS guided audios were amazing to me. It was exactly what I needed at that time to really help me get through that ebb.
Yeah.
And I just started using a lot of your other tools. You were the first person to introduce me to parts work, and which was really transformational in my journey as well. I slowly started to incorporate chronic fatigue school. And I was just really going at a pace that I felt was comfortable for me. I did not stop DNRS. I
Hmm.
continued to use DNRS during this time. You and I had done a coaching call by this point, and you were supporting me in other areas. But I just wanted to make a note that this is more what healing looks like than what
Yes.
people think healing is
Yes.
going to
Yeah.
look like.
Oh, yeah.
When we first start, we think it's just going to one day, it's all going to click and we're going to wake up and we're going to
Hmm.
be like the best version of ourselves. And it doesn't work that way. And it really is a layer after layer of processing.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I saw a really beautiful video, and I can't remember who was doing it, but they were holding this sort of geometric ball that would contract and
Yes, the
expand.
expansion and contraction.
Yes.
Yes, we talk about that a lot. Yep.
Yeah, and so that to me now is so clear to see. We always say healing is not a straight line, it's not a
Yeah.
straight path, but there's still a big part of our brain that wants to believe that it is, that
Yes.
that
Yes.
we will just get to this point and we'll be a lot better and every symptom will resolve, and we'll never have to deal with anything again. But I have found healing for me to be exactly like that. After every contraction, my expansions were not only greater, but filled with so much more insight. Um,
Yes.
Things that I had already been learning about, tools that I was applying, all of a sudden they made sense on a whole new level, and I was able to apply them even deeper. And this just continued to happen with every expansion.
And
So,
let's talk a little bit about that expansion too, right? We're noticing, and we talk about that a lot. People may call these contractions dips. They may call them, setbacks, they may call them whatever it might be, right? There's a lot of names and terms for them. And what we mainly would describe them as, a lot of people will say symptoms might get louder, or maybe a new symptom will pop up, something might change.
Yeah.
And we're, human, we're automatically going to assume that we're getting worse, there's something wrong, right? And the key in those situations is the way that we're responding, right? Can we respond differently than we would have in the past? And well, now we're resourced, so we can. And what I've rewired my brain to expect, and you know this because this is all over my membership in Haven, is that those periods of dips or setbacks are opportunities to choose differently. They are recalibration, there's processing happening. And I trained my brain to expect a leap after this because I knew that healing was happening. And I always bring up kind of that example of growth spurts with babies, right? They get really cranky, maybe they want to sleep a lot, and then
Mhm.
like suddenly they're walking or talking or whatever it might
Yeah.
be. And so that's where that expansion, right? That is like
Yes.
we're expanding our window, we're suddenly feeling better, the symptoms are getting less, we're, feeling like more hopeful, things are happening, and then we can sometimes experience that contraction. And there is purpose to both. And if you think of it this way, right, we can't just be ever expanding.
Yeah.
We expand, we contract, we process, we make sense of it, we recalibrate, we learn, and then we
Yes.
expand again, right? And so that's that rhythm, the rhythm of life, that expansion
Yes.
and contraction. And I love that you brought that up because, like you said, it's definitely not linear. So whether you're seeing like ups, downs, or expansion and contraction, that is something to expect on this journey. It's
Yes.
part of the healing and it's not to be feared. It means
Yes.
there's healing happening, right?
Yes. And that, to me, that was it took me a long time to have the capacity, but I think bringing in parts work really helped me to learn to change my response in a real way
Mm,
to what was happening before I was still reacting.
yeah.
We still have that
Yes.
initial knee jerk reaction of, I don't want to feel this. This doesn't feel good. And I want it
Yeah,
to go away. But that's not what the tools are for. That's not
exactly.
how the tools are to be applied, is to make that symptom or whatever's coming up go away. And it took me a while of bringing in parts work. I was doing chronic fatigue school. They talked about parts work. But when I listened to your guided audio on parts work, it made more sense to me.
Hmm.
And I did have a big relief the first time that I did your parts work, which I felt like, wow, this is like amazing, and a whole new like layer of healing and, tools that I was bringing in. Um, and it created my first relationship with all of these parts, with these symptoms coming up. And it really transformed it from
Hmm.
reacting to really pausing to see what these parts needed and to responding. And it took time. It did take time once I started bringing in all of those new tools and information. But I did a international trip this past Christmas,
Yeah.
which was beautiful and wonderful, and I had such a great time. And um, towards the end of that trip, I became a little activated just from the stress of travel and
Hmm.
being out and doing lots of new things for several weeks. And that was the first time that I found myself in an activated state, that I was able to apply the tools in real time. And I was able to pause. And I just remember speaking out loud and saying, I see you, part. I see you,
Yes.
fear. What is it that I can do to help you feel more safe? And that
Yes.
really like just set off this chain reaction within my brain. Like, just so much understanding and unfolding came after that.
And
I
compassion,
actually,
right? That
yes,
self-compassion, right? That's so
yes.
key.
And that is another thing that, along the way, I'm a pretty compassionate person. It's very easy for me to give compassion to others. And I never
Hmm.
realized how hard it was to give it to myself until I literally had to
Yep.
teach myself to be
Preaching to the
compassionate
choir,
to
girl.
myself.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's amazing. And these are all the extra things that come in with healing that you don't
Yeah.
expect. It's like I came in just to, feel a little calmer and have more energy, I had no idea how it would transform my relationship with myself.
Yeah.
For a lot of us, this is the first time we are really having an honest relationship with ourselves whenever we're healing. It definitely was for me. It really helped me to understand how much of that's just how I am
Mm,
was really just a lot of coping behaviors that I had picked up since
yeah.
childhood. So really to be able to really see that and to really start to feel a true sense of myself, probably for the first time in my life, is amazing. And that's not on, that wasn't on the DNRS
Yeah, yeah,
that
exactly,
came through
right? It's like I
healing.
just want my symptoms gone and then
Yes.
it's just like, whoa, layer by layer, right? Uncovering blankets of trauma and coping
Yeah.
mechanisms and toxic behaviors and then completely changing your vision of who you are and also your priorities changing of like,
Yes.
your life purpose, your values, your beliefs. You are not even close to the same person that you are when
No.
you start this journey. And that's something that I didn't expect either. I literally just thought
No.
I would get rid of symptoms and like go
Yeah.
back to, who I was doing what I was doing too, right?
Right.
And we also know how that is not the point. We're not supposed to go back, right?
Yes.
Because those
And
are, the behaviors that got us here in the first place.
right.
And
Exactly.
yeah, so that I love that you brought that up. So bring us to, really now and what your life looks like right now.
So what my life looks like right now, I now feel like I can tailor what I need to use.
Hmm.
I don't have to adhere to like, a program that I'm like, I have to do this work every day, like I did with DNRS for the first year.
Hmm.
I am still going through Somia's new program, their Heal program, and I'm taking that sort of slowly in. I feel like with Primal Trust and with Somia, they have broken those programs into two levels.
Hmm.
And I see how important that is now, with the first level really being about, neuroplasticity and really calming down your system and creating flexibility within your nervous system. And to
Hmm.
me, that's what I really feel has healed so much in me is, yes, I can still get activated sometimes. Yes, symptoms can still come up, but I am able to have a flexible nervous system where I come back
Yes.
into a regulated state very quickly. I'm obviously able to listen to what my body needs. So when things come up, I'm able to work with it and process it. So I don't have a strict set of rules. I'm able to tailor several different programs, Heal, DNRS, and Somia International, the tools that they have, and I'm able to sort of create what works best for me on
Yeah.
any given day. And
Yeah.
for a long time, I was like, oh, I didn't really do anything today. I didn't do a visualization, and I started to realize like I didn't need to.
I don't need
Like
to.
I'm able
Yes.
to just sort of go about my day and nothing's coming up. And, if a small something does pop up, I can redirect quickly and just carry on with my day. So my capacity has grown a lot. I can do a lot of what I want to do now. I am still working on a few areas, and I feel like I am in this level 2 now of these programs where we're going deeper now
Hmm.
because I have built the capacity to do that, which is
Exactly.
why it's important, I believe, to start slow and to wait until you can build capacity. I now have the capacity to work with grief, to work with my inner child parts, which will only continue to create more healing. So, but I've had to work
Exactly.
up to that.
Yeah, and I love that let's pause there for a second and talk about that because I think people come into this world and they're very eager to do the trauma work, to get rid of it, to
Yeah,
have these massive releases, right?
yeah,
And it's too much too fast.
yeah,
Right. Speaking from experience and also working with hundreds in this community, where, we're not meant to go all in right away, 90 for nothing when, especially when it comes to trauma. So, like you said, building that foundation is key. Having a foundation in regulation, building resources that you feel confident you can use in real time as these layers are showing up, right? And you talk about the grief as well. I see this with everyone that I work with, after we've kind of built some regulation and we're coming into more of ourselves in our lives, the grief starts to surface to heal. And it's an important piece of it that we don't want to bypass and we shouldn't bypass, but a piece that we didn't have the capacity for before. So I love that you brought that up when you're saying, like now it's surfacing and now I have capacity, I have space for it. In the past, I didn't. And so that is like the, ultimate way to approach this is to recognize that at the beginning, it's really about cultivating safety,
Yes.
right? In little ways, as best you can, signaling safety to the brain, building it in the body. And like you said, this like next level, we're leveling
Right.
up. That's when we're starting to do a lot of the deeper work, right? Maybe
Yeah.
this some of the trauma surfacing, the like you said, the parts work, the trauma resolution, inner child stuff. And I think that's just a beautiful, really message that people need to hear. It's like, don't rush to do the deeper work,
Yeah.
right? You'll get there and this is a wonderful part is you'll know when you're ready.
Yes.
I knew, right? My brain
Yes.
brought up the memories when
Yes.
it's like, yes,
Yeah.
now, right? I couldn't ignore it anymore. I couldn't like,
Right.
it's like, no, it's time. A part of me
Yeah.
is ready. And,
Yeah.
and I can see, yeah, that's happened for you as well, which is amazing to see.
Yeah, and that it happened in that exact way. I just
Yeah.
sort of knew that I had the capacity for it. And when I talk to other people about doing parts work or inner child work, that's something that I always emphasize is you need to build the capacity for it. I'm not saying to go jump into to
Yeah.
trauma work or child work. You need to feel ready and you need to build the capacity. And if you start working with this and it becomes too much, then that's a good sign to sort of pull back and
Yeah.
go slower. So it happened very organically for me. And what, another thing that comes up is, have I healed from a lot of things? Do I have a more flexible nervous system? Yes. And now that my body and brain are like, okay, now we're going to get to some really deep stuff
Yeah. Oh
now.
yeah. It's the fun
Um,
part, right? It's the really fun
yes.
part.
So, and and that sometimes can be hard too, to
Yeah.
work with these parts. But the understanding and the perspective that I have with working with these parts is so different than when I first started my journey. And it's so worth it. And like you said, anytime things come up or I might find myself, a little low energy or emotions are coming up that I feel like I need to deal with, I think of it as a great opportunity. And,
Yes.
I'm a little over 2 years into doing this work. And sometimes I feel like I am just at the beginning of everything that is possible when it comes
Mm.
to healing. I have had such open, expansive moments that I feel like my heart was just wide open. And
Yeah.
I can never explain in words, in poetry and painting and anything, how beautiful an experience that was for me and how it truly connected me in a way. And I'm not specifically religious or specifically over spiritual, but I feel like this ties you without, you can't bypass how it ties you to the beauty of life, of
Yes.
being and having this experience. And that is another thing I never expected to happen.
Yeah, that unintended or unexpected side effect of the way that you see the world after. I remember it was like seeing everything for the first time again.
Yeah.
Literally, like I even for myself went for a walk yesterday and it's still there with me like this far along in my journey where I am actually noticing the world around me and I'm looking at the trees and they're starting to bud and I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
That's remarkable. That's miraculous. And, it's really this gratitude for life, but also the more safe that we feel and regulated in our nervous system, the more capacity for the joy also, and
Yeah.
for, all the amazing
Absolutely.
parts of this world, of this life, right? And I'm so glad that, you're able to see that now. And actually, I would love to kind of know what is something that you would have done differently on this journey for those who are watching this? Is there anything you would have done differently?
I don't know. It is a hindsight thing, so it's
Yeah.
hard to say if I would have. The best advice I can give is, or that I would have given myself is, to get rid of that timeline. It really sets us up for, well, this person got better, the comparison and the timeline we give ourselves for healing. And it really can make us feel bad if we feel like we're not meeting this deadline, especially if you have an overachieving part that is always used to being able to get things done in a certain amount of time. So, I would have really listened to people when they said that and not focused on that. Um, and the other thing that I think is really important that I would have done differently is I would not have approached DNRS with the same mindset that got me sick to begin with.
Mm. So like that
You know,
militant type attitude, right? Like
yes,
yeah, I did the
yeah,
same.
I
So
was
you're not the
like,
only
I'm
one.
gonna I'm gonna be like the valedictorian of brain retraining. Like I was ready to
Amazing.
tackle it with full academic force, like I did everything else in my life. And I was like, I'm gonna get this, I'm gonna achieve. And even though part of that helped me to really persevere with my healing, I feel like for a while it created some stuckness for me in
Hmm.
healing
Yeah.
because of trying to approach it that way. So that's definitely something else I would have done differently, was really to have approached it in a new way and free of any, independent outcome, of
Yes, that
what
outcome
was happening.
independence. Yeah, that's key. And those are great pieces of advice, right? And as we look back, trying not to walk into this healing journey with the same coping mechanisms, and most of us will, because we don't
Yeah.
know any better yet, but there will come a time
Yes.
where those will also unfold, right? And we'll start to get to know ourselves better. But if I were to ask you, and this is, as we're wrapping this up, what is one piece of advice? This is your hope rope that you would give to someone who's either, you know, just beginning this journey or has been on this journey for a while and feeling, really maybe frustrated or hopeless even. What would be your hope rope to extend to them?
I really feel, and I know people say this a lot, and I've been at times when I've heard it that it seemed frustrating to me, but to truly trust the process of what
Mhm.
is happening. And by doing that, you're really trusting in yourself and you're really fueling, or you're really, combating any limiting beliefs that you may not ever get better, or that you don't have the capacity to. Um, Really trust in yourself, trust in this process, because it is something that we all go through. We all go through the doubt, we all go through the resistance. We all start thinking, how long is it going to be till I get
Yeah.
to this state?
Yep.
But to just really hold on to that, trust the process of what is happening, and know that it is going to unfold when it is right for you. And we are all so different and we are all wired so differently that you can't compare yourself to somebody else. Our experience is so different. So trust the process and don't ever give up on yourself and this beautiful innate power that we all have within us to truly heal and transform ourselves.
Oh, I love that, Jessica. That was so beautiful. Thank you so much. I think that you have such a beautiful story of unfolding, right? And transformation, and you've come such a long way. And you showed up for yourself every single day, and it shows, right? And I know you, like you said, it's been 2 years. My journey was also longer, and I feel like healing is something and people probably don't want to hear it, but we do this till our last breath, right? We're always healing or growing or learning or transforming. We're never, you know, the same person we were yesterday and so on and so forth. And it's not something to fear. It's something to get excited about. It's something to be grateful for that you get these opportunities to know yourself better, to experience the world differently, and to really transform. So it's been an absolute pleasure having you here. And for
Thank you
those
so
of you
much.
who maybe you can share how they can get in contact with you if you maybe, and we can drop these also in the bio as well, but she's on Instagram. If you
Yes.
wanted to mention your tag names.
Yes, I am on Instagram. My handle is the Compassionate Observer, but I'll give you that to
Yes.
put on there. And I am starting to dive into mind body coaching, and I hope to be able to offer that service in the future and to be able to help other people on
Yes.
this journey.
Yeah, that's amazing, right? It's amazing when we see those of us who have gone forward and we're turning back to help others, right? So again, extending that hope road. I always see that image of like I'm,
Yes.
passing it out to you, you're passing it out to someone else, and like we're all pulling each other up. And I hope that for those of you who are watching today, that this was that hope rope that you needed, that you can hold on to it tightly, and that it can help spur belief in you. And you can borrow our beliefs, borrow our testimonies, and just keep showing up. And please share this with someone who needs to hear it. Thank you so much, Jessica. It was a
Thank
pleasure,
you.
and stay tuned for the next episode. Perfect.